Hi, welcome to Coffee Conversations for Relationships, where we give you practical tips to improve your relationship. My name is Jay Pyatt.
Hi, and I'm Lori Pyatt. And today we're going to cover something we rarely get to cover, and that is, well, at least publicly, it's the story of how we first met. We've shared kind of the disasters that have happened in our marriage publicly before, but this is the fun side of it because it's kind of a fun story. So, do you want to start?
In 1993, I got out of the military and had started working for a local hospital. And as a result, I had to run around to different parts of the hospital, fixing computers and doing different types of things like that. And believe it or not, the military really didn't teach me a lot about social skills, and my degree as a computer programmer didn't teach me a lot about social skills. So I was single at the time, and people were recommending that I talk to Lori. And yeah, well, they were saying, you know, she's single and cute and all this.
I wasn't poking fun.
I don't know. I was trying to flirt, I guess, is the worst part about this was how bad it comes off, because she was standing outside of the office working on this copier, and the copier had a tendency to break down and so on. But just me being kind of a dumb guy or whatever, I just walked up to her while she was working on it, and I said, "Did you break it again, woman?" And then I kind of walked off.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I came upon a broken copier and I need to use it, so I'm fixing it. Yeah, and it was more like, "Did you break it again, woman?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I don't even know you." Actually, my first exposure to him was people on my side were saying, "Hey, you know, Jay's single and he's a Christian." And I was like, "Who's Jay?" And because I was newer than Jay, I started a couple years after you did. And I was like, "Oh, that big tall guy that I see walking behind the, you know, people from IS coming back from lunch." And they said, "Yeah." That's all I really knew about him, was he worked right next door in the next apartment, and he was very tall.
Yeah, kind of. I was referred to as Lurch or Frankenstein by a mutual friend of ours. Anyway, so that was one of our first interactions. And then there was another time where I walked up to her while she was in that same position, and I noticed that she had on this blazer or vest or something that had kind of a fringe or tassels or strings hanging down off of the shoulder. And I walked up and I just kind of flicked them and started laughing and walked away.
This again was at that same copier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, that was an interesting interaction too.
Yeah.
The second time I remember seeing him, I guess the third time, the first time I really interacted with him, I was backup payroll for the hospital, and I was training. And I was there with the main payroll clerk, and he, there was issues with the computer, and
I came out to fix it, and I said to the woman sitting in the chair, I said, "Get up." And she said,
"Aren't you going to say please?"
And I said, "My mama doesn't even get a please."
And both she and I just looked at each other and were like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
And I don't think I've ever used that phrase before or since in my entire life.
Were you trying to flirt at that point?
I have no idea what I was trying to do. I think I was just that job to me was so overwhelming in a way of just running pretty much all day long fixing computers. And it was me and one other guy pretty much all day long. Anyway, that was the kind of the negative interactions that I had, my awkwardness and inability to communicate well. But
I guess I'll just cut in here and say, Jay, well, let me ask you, what was your internal response whenever people said, "Hey, Lori's single"? I mean, at first.
At first, it was just, she's really not my type, which is kind of a misogynistic, sexist kind of response, I think. And it's not even really a godly one, because I think God would say, she's your type. You need to just let me lead you. And but I don't know. I think I was making it on all of the, what's the right word? The surface type, the aesthetic issues, as opposed to really getting to know her. And
well, my response to Jay, or not to Jay, but my internal response when people would say, hey, Jay's single, I wasn't really into him either. He was stressed at work, and he came across very kind of workaholic-y and very stern. So I just thought, yeah, thank you. And kind of went on with my day.
Yeah. Anyway, so I had started going back to church, and Lori was seeking a church, I think, and through a mutual friend, either she was invited to the church through this mutual friend, or I invited her, I can't remember. So she came to church, and I was running this is back in the day that we still had overhead slides to see church music, so I was running the overhead slides. And the worship would impact me emotionally, and I would cry, and I came back and sat down near her or something and said, sometimes it gets a little emotional for me. And
which was a huge shock, because he didn't show up that way at work at all.
Yeah. So I think it wasn't too many more weeks after that we went out to lunch together with the group from the church. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, well, it was after the very first time I went that we all went out as a group together, and you and I stayed and talked for a while afterwards.
Yeah.
And then,
so we stayed and talked for quite a while, and then one day we were at her. I was talking to her at her desk. I don't know if this was before or at the printer or during, or.
It was before.
Yeah.
It was before. Okay, so this is where I really feel like God had a hand. My printer, and I wasn't attracted to him at this point, and even though I saw him act differently at church, I still didn't feel that draw. So I promise you I was not breaking my printer. But this printer, it was a dot matrix, so it had the ribbon, and it was noisy and all that. It had 3 or 4 different issues in succession, including a time where they replaced, and this was in with like the span of a couple weeks, and they had replaced the ribbon, and it left this slime behind. It was like this gross, slimy printing. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
So Jay kept coming out to fix it.
Yeah. Because the other guy that could fix it, when Lori would approach him, he finally just grabbed his head in exasperation. It was like, oh. Yeah,
he inhaled deeply, and his face immediately turned red, and I could tell he was about to scream. And so I was like, I backed up slowly, and I said, I'll talk to Jay about it. And from then on, I went to talk to Jay, because I didn't want this guy exploding on me. But
right.
So he had been, helping me with the printer. And then there was one day where he was at my computer fixing it right as I was leaving, and it was just me, you, and like one other person in the office. And so he and I got to talking, and
she said she had to go home and fix dinner, and I asked her what she was making.
And so I said, I'm making Golden Chick, which in that town was my personal favorite place to get chicken.
Yeah. And so Golden Chick, if you're listening, we'll take a bucket anytime you want to sponsor our show. But it was my favorite chicken place too. And I told her that, it's mine and my cat's favorite. And she said, "You have cats?" And I said, "I have 5."
Yeah, because him even having one cat just was outside of my thinking on what this guy was about. But
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, you don't just have one cat, you have 5 cats?" And I was like, that just blew me away. So that showed me a different side of him. And then we went to church and I saw that side of you. And I thought maybe there's something there.
Right.
So then there was one day we were out at my desk fixing another issue, and I can't remember how the thought, like, it's like, "You're not so threatening, not as threatening as I thought you were." And you said,
Yeah, if I really wanted to threaten you, I'd ask you on a date.
I was like, "Oh," and then I remember it. This lady named Kim was sitting across the way, and her eyes shot up, and she kind of gave me this look like, "Oh." So anyway, I was like, "Oh, really?" And so that started us dating. And the first couple times we went out, again, I was like, okay, they're, maybe, but I'm still not super interested. And I was a mother already. And so I said, "Look, I don't have a babysitter this next week. I'll be bringing my daughter." And so I did, and we watched cartoons, and then you made cookies. And that first time we were in your apartment, and you were on one couch and she and I were on another, and you fell off the couch laughing at the cartoons. Me and my daughter kind of looked at each other and was like, "Oh, okay." And then the second time we went, same exact scenario. We got that kind of chicken from Golden Chick, and watched cartoons and made cookies. And then as we had to go, so she and I loaded up in the car, and as I was pulling out of the parking spot, I remember her saying clearly, "I hope you marry him." And I was just like, okay, God can do anything, but I really don't think so. And, I didn't think anything else of it. And then you asked me out again.
Mhm.
And we went on our third date, and we tried to go to Olive Garden in the big city nearby. So we had an hour drive, and that was packed. So instead we went to Outback, where the first time I was ever at Outback, and I got their bloomin' onion, and oh my gosh, that thing was so hot. And they'd put like extra pepper on my steak, and so my mouth was just burning. And but we had a good time.
Yeah.
And then I can't even remember what we did on the third date, but we had a couple of dates where it was just us. And then you and I were standing outside one of the accountant's offices at work one day, and I looked at you, and I saw through your glasses, because you had those self-tinting glasses, and I guess it was light enough that they weren't doing that. And I saw your eyes, and I was like, "Oh, he's got really pretty eyes." And I don't know, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Now this is part that we shared before, but we only dated 2 months.
About
2 months before we started talking marriage. And then because of a job I was going to fulfill, like I was required to fulfill a job covering this span of time. So we were thinking, so we started dating early October. We were engaged on the day after Thanksgiving, and we were talking about getting married in December, before I had to be,
on this new job.
So we thought, no, that's way too soon. So we waited till after that and got married in March.
Yeah, which was still only
It's
5.5, 6 months
Yeah.
that we even knew each other by the time we got married. So
I don't suggest that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's bad, but I can, without a doubt, say it did introduce problems that we probably might have avoided had we waited.
yeah. But as you guys get to know me, you'll see that I needed to move quickly, or she would have gotten away. She would have found out everything, and I would have we wouldn't have had this relationship. But I think overall, as we move forward, we'll see that this was a good thing for our relationship to connect early, and there were some really godly things in the midst of all of this.
Yeah, we'll have to do that another day. So it's kind
Yeah.
yeah, because if you know the other part of my story, you know that I really debated on whether to marry him. And that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
But this isn't just about us. We want to know what your story is. You can feel free to send us an email or even a recording if you'd want to, because we'd love to hear from both of you about how y'all met. And if you reach out to us with your story, we might even give you a shout out in a future podcast. So,
We'll see you all on the next episode.
bye.
Bye.